Hello there, my name's Terry Watts and welcome to my first ever podcast. It's April 2020 and like many people, I'm in enforced isolation at home while the coronavirus rages around me. And apart from doing my bit to help some local vulnerable people with shopping and things like that and keeping the family happy, I found myself doing a lot of work trying to actually just keep things going and keep interest in the projects I'm trying to run and keep momentum going. But I've also found there's quite a lot of time to reflect on what we're doing, the impact of the coronavirus on all of us and what long term is going to be. And reflect, particularly for me, something which is a passion of mine is the built environment. Particularly came to be a passion when I joined the CIOB a number of years ago. And as MD there, I met loads of people who ran not always the biggest companies, but they ran good sized construction companies. And the passion they had for the projects they undertook and the work they had done, and the fact that they felt that they were monuments to their efforts in their working life, and the pride they had in all of that was outstanding. And I was really moved by some of the stories and some of the things that people showed me and told me about. And it made me realize the value and the importance of the built environment, a sector that I think is kind of hidden to most of society, despite the fact we all live in it. We go to school in it, we shop in it, we have fun in it, we go to the gym, we entertain ourselves, and we're all isolated pretty much now in the built environment as well. We don't pay much attention to it. And you'd think it would be such an important part of our lives, yet people seem to think it's just there and they don't have a role to play. And that's, you'd think as well, given how important it is and how much it produces 40% of the CO2 emissions that mankind produces, we spend loads of money on it, that we'd want to make it work really well and be really efficient and really effective. Yet any one of you, I'm sure, could tell me that the industry isn't quite like that. There are lots of problems with it, and they've been documented by many people. And my job isn't here to rehash those arguments. What I really like to do over a couple of podcasts, not quite sure how many yet, is to explain how I think we can approach things differently. And the way I'm doing it is my role over quite a long career now in a number of companies, ranging from IBM through to startups of the CIOB I mentioned, working in a training company in the FE sector, and I ran one of the sector skills councils for 8 or so years as well. So been around the built environment and skills and people in this world for quite a long while. What I tend to do in companies is help them revise what their strategy is, where they're trying to get to, and make sure that the activities they're carrying out, the projects they're taking, are done as efficiently and effectively as possible. All the different strands add up together and that they deliver the KPIs that they've got. So link the activities, the people, through to the KPIs and deliverables at the end. And I thought what I'd do, little mental exercises, do the same thing for the built environment. And none of you will be too surprised. It's quite a complicated, quite a difficult calculation, difficult thing to set up. But I've had a go, and I'd really like to lay that out for you in the next few minutes to see if there's if it gels with you, and perhaps you could join me in trying to make this a change program, my manifesto for the built environment. So see what you think. I'll be really keen to get your feedback. Okay, so the first thing you notice coming from the outside is it's a really strong sector. Whatever happens, whatever robots do, whatever the internet does, whatever automation does, I expect there'll always be a need for the built environment. There'll always be requirement for shops and factories and manufacturing facilities, for transport links, roads, or whatever we end up with in time. And there'll always be a need for the built environment. And growth is strong. There's a lot of activity going on. Government has announced a requirement for 300,000 new homes every year. It's well documented, £1 billion per year being invested by the government on that, and lots from the private sector. There's huge infrastructure projects going ahead. HS2, Crossrail, Hinkley Point, there's schools and hospitals being built. The government's promised 151 billion already, and there was more promised in the budget and more to come. So there's a real desire for the government to invest in the infrastructure of the UK, which is definitely needed. I think we'd all agree with that. How the current activities will affect that, I don't know, but there'll still be a requirement for us to do a lot of work in creating the built environment and managing it. Does it feel like a successful industry though? I don't think it does. And despite the fact that we do deliver huge projects, very innovative, lots of problems solved, it's a great industry in that respect. But does it look like success? Does it feel like success? Especially when you see stories like a couple of years ago now, Edinburgh School wall collapse. So for the want, as I understand it, of some ties. Brick wall fell into a playground in a school in Scotland. Didn't hurt anybody. No one was there, fortunately, but it could have been a complete disaster there. And our industry allowed that to happen. Hinkley Point, the costs at Hinkley Point are rising, and there's question marks over that. Crossrail, when's that going to finish? I mean, the latest deadlines have already been passed, and we're going to have to review those again now after the current crisis. Same's true of HS2. When's that really going to? Does anyone really believe it will be delivered on budget and to time? It's already gone way over, and it's already much more expensive than was ever expected. And then there's the whole issue of the housing sector. It's amazing how someone can spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on a product, which is what it is, and only 80% of those people who buy it are satisfied. Imagine if 80% of the people who bought cars were satisfied and had to go back to the garage before the first 10,000 miles or so were completed. That would be a disaster for that industry and any other industry. Yet the house building continues. And this quality is just not there. It's not good enough. We need to address that and try and make things work better. Not that there aren't good people working there, not that the intention isn't there. No one goes to work to do a bad job, but things aren't working as they should be. And that's reflected in the business model as well. There's failures in the sector like nowhere else, as far as I'm aware, and the number of businesses failing, some big, huge companies failing and causing all sorts of problems, but lots, you will know, if you're in the industry, lots of small companies going to the wall. And the current crisis is going to make that worse, but it's not as a result of the coronavirus. It's actually been a problem for the industry for many years. So let's not pretend it's something new. There'll be lots of business failures. Anyway, as I said, the problems are well rehearsed. We understand all of those. My job is not to talk about them, but I want to talk about solutions. So here we go. First of all, I think the built environment is what we should be talking about. We talk about construction, which is obviously part of the built environment, but my background way back when I was in IBM was the technology sector. And I said the technology sector, not programming. Programming is the bit that makes technology work. It's essential to every iPhone, smart device, computer, TV. There's programming goes on in there. No one talks about the programming. They talk about the technology sector, and they talk about what you do with the programming, how you make it work and its benefits to clients and society and individuals. The built environment is the same. Why do we talk about and promote something which is an old-fashioned concept, which is construction, and puts a lot of people off? A lot of people, and you talk to your kids, if they're like mine, I ask them, what do you think about when you think about construction? And they think about the guys who are really good guys who built the extension at the back of my house on a cold, wet February in knee-deep in mud and trying to make the whole thing work. And they did a brilliant job, but that's what they see of as construction. That's not representative of the industry anymore. It's a part of the industry. It's not the whole industry. We need to talk about the built environment. We need to talk about the whole environment and the whole aspect of creating the place in which we live. And that will attract the skills and the investment and the people for the future. I really believe that. So first of all, we should define what we're talking about. Then we need to talk about the image of the sector, because as I mentioned, it's seen as construction. People don't realize that they're in the built environment sometimes, and youngsters certainly don't realize that there are exciting careers to be followed there. We need to talk about the culture and not pretend that because the large companies have managed to create policies and ways that mean that women are more welcome into the workplace, and a lot of the changes that we know have happened, you don't get wolf whistles or scaffolding anymore, that sort of stuff. The culture of the industry under the surface is still as it was 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ago. And we need to accept that, and we need to move forward and challenge that. We can't just pretend it's all okay and just tick boxes. The engagement leadership is really important. I don't think there are really any leaders in the sector. The main contractors are doing great work to try and improve the quality of what they do. They are relatively small companies in a 2.3 million person industry. A company, one of the larger main contractors, would have probably employ maybe 15,000 people. That's not going to affect the world. If you go to the retail sector, I don't know the numbers for Tesco's, but it's hundreds of thousands of people. And you go into the other sectors, like in automotive, for example, tens of thousands of people working for a few companies with a solid and sustained supply chain. The business models aren't right. Business is going bust. Margins are tiny. It's not working for us. And technology. We talk about technology, and you mentioned that, and everybody thinks about drones and BIM. That's a tiny part of what technology can do for this sector. So what we need to do is not just talk about these things. We need to actually, and not just do things from the top down. We've been working through, ever since the Egan report, which is the one I remember from way back. There might be earlier ones. And we've talked about the problems that the sector has faced, and we've tried to fix them from top down. CITB's invested millions, if not billions by now, in trying to address the skills issue. The Construction Leadership Council has got its strategy and stuff. It's all top down stuff. It hits all the big companies. It doesn't hit the 90% of the industry that is doing the work elsewhere in the sector. We need to have a groundswell of activity. We need to find ways of everybody to be involved in what we're trying to achieve, and it needs to be visible. So we need to make sure there's a program of change, I believe, that all can contribute to, that will help us to drive forward a new version, a new vision for the built environment. And we just need to be honest about it, really. We've got a lot to do. It's a big sector. There's some big, deep-seated issues that we need to address. And we need to at least acknowledge what they are and then try and find out how we can change them. So that's what I'm going to try and lay out to you. It doesn't mean I have all the answers. I really don't. And it doesn't mean I want to invent a whole load of new stuff to go on. That would be counterproductive too. What I want to do is to try and work out a language and a framework which we can all operate in to try and understand the next steps that we can take to see a construction and built environment sector that delivers the quality of product, brings in the number of people, and is an attractive place to work that we all need it to be in the future. So if you want to help me on that, part 2 will be coming soon. I'd like some reaction for part 1 if that's possible. And if you look at the bottom right hand corner. So if you do feel you'd like to come along with me on this journey and try and improve what we're doing for the built environment, or at least find out what's driving me mad while I'm in isolation here in Abingdon, drop me a line. The email address is at the top of the screen there, terry@forensis.co.uk. I really look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for your time.